everybody, welcome back. After one hell of a 2022, getting back on it, making videos again. The end of 2022, me and Miss Boogie moved to beautiful York, Pennsylvania. Since then, got a new shop. I grew a sweet beard. My father-in-law came from Iowa, helped me hang some cabinets, put up some new lights. And I finally added a thinking chair. Something I needed for a long time, and that's absolutely going to pay off in the future. Now, the last video cleaned up some of the parts of the engine bay that had always bothered me. Tried a very half-assed fix on the engine smoking issue I was having, which was mildly successful. After that, I did a compression test, and so to address this issue, I'm going to do the stereo in the truck. There's a lot to do here. Speakers, wiring, amp, your mom. So let's start with the existing setup on the truck. Head unit is an old Pioneer double din. It was state of the art for its time, but it's over 10 years old. But it's slow to connect through Bluetooth, and there's just a lot better options on the market nowadays. Probably going to go ahead and replace that thing later on. Now, the only speakers I've ever had in this truck are run directly off the head unit, mounted up here in the dash. Now, those speakers are definitely not held in place by stolen hotel towels. I could never really hear these things, so it was easy to get rid of them. I think they're only like 4¼ inch speakers. Now, this truck is an 88, so the goal here is to make everything look like it came from 1988. I don't want everything to look crazy custom, so I'm not going to be doing any fancy molded fiberglass door pods or kick panels or anything like that. Now, tackling something like this can be a little bit overwhelming. Sort of like eating an elephant. How to eat an elephant? One piece at a time. So let's go ahead and get started mounting those speakers in the doors. Alright, since we start with the mids and highs, we're going to start the door panel here. If you have an old school Mini, this is probably pretty similar to the door panels on your truck. You notice it's pretty square, has a lot of straight lines, and I kind of want to mimic that going forward. So this is the shape I came up with. I just kind of laid it up here, looked at the available area I had, and tried to make something that has similar angles, rounded edges, but fits in that location, and most importantly, misses the dash when the door is closed. Next step here is to take that door panel off and see what's behind there. That's not good. Anyway, come here. So this is the location that speaker's going to sit. At least I hope. Right along here is the bottom of the door panel. Here's the buttons where it actually snaps into place. What I've got to do is make sure nothing behind the inner door skin is getting in the way of that speaker going in. These trucks were never meant to have door speakers, so there's no pass-throughs for wiring. There's definitely nowhere to mount a speaker, and the doors are pretty thin, so it's not like there's a whole lot of room anyway. So for the speakers, I decided to break loose some of that juicy YouTube money and splurge on a set of Kicker KSS670 6¾ inch components. 125 watts RMS with a 1-inch tweeter and a separate crossover. I like the fact that they've got a bigger woofer, decent power handling, and aren't very deep. The theme to this whole build is going to be a focus on the install with meh parts. I didn't go to the top end, I didn't go to the bottom, I went right in the middle. Out of the kindness of their hearts, Kicker supplied this little template with their speakers. It has a handy dandy little center hole, as well as mounting holes for the woofer. It also has a little spot where you can separate the inner hole from the outer hole for setup. So what I done and did was drill this center hole through the door panel, laid out off of my template, so I would have a clue where the center of this speaker was going to be on the inner door skin. Then it's just as simple as taking that template, laying it up there, seeing everything that's in your way. Here's my latest huge embarrassing disaster. This is the hole that I drilled through the door panel into the inner door skin in order to transfer the center line of that speaker to see what's in my way. Here are the spot welds that hold this little bracket to the door skin. Then this bracket is holding the window channel that allows the window to ride up and down on the regulator. I do not want to screw that up because I don't want to have to re-engineer my doors or break a window or something stupid like that. I'd looked at other locations for this. I think it'll really look best where it's at. And that bracket's not really that big a deal. I haven't come all this way to let a pussy little bracket like that kick my ass. So here's what I'm thinking. See that bolt back there? That's one of the door bolts. That square nut is welded to the door jamb. I'm going to build something off of that to come over here, catch this bracket out of the way of my speaker, so I can then come in, cut that bracket off, trim this out, slap a speaker in here, and bing bam boom, Ram 50 with door speakers. And just like that, we have an inner door plate. Now that nut is about 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch deep. I drilled it out till it made it over the square corners. Put a relief in the back so that it fits over the top of that. Now, if only I had something to bolt that down with. Just looking at that, I'm going to bet that that's an 8x125. Meet an 8x125 metric nut. Let's see if I'm right. Maybe I'll just go in through the outside. Alright, that conglomerated mess on there. Need to build something to come off of that piece of plate, come over and connect to this bracket. Welcome to Plan G. Just stick a profile gauge in there, get a shape of that bracket, so I can start building the piece that's going to go from the bracket over to my piece of plate. Now I have a pretty good idea what that shape's going to look like. Viola. This is only 1/8 inch plate. I think it's enough. Holy shit. With the help of our friend Magnetism, that thing's sitting in there. I'll have to tack it up, make sure it can come out, so I can prep all this stuff. Then we'll really know what's what. Well, through the magic of shaky cam, it's in. Not sure how I feel about it. Well, after some review, I think I'm going to redo this thing. Not exactly what you'd call up to my standards. Go figure. Welding through a hole is difficult. Who knew? Anyway, this will make a nice template. There we go. Nothing fancy, but a lot better. Alright, a little bit of trimming. Got the new bracket in place. Once I get that tacked in, I can cut this old brace, start to trim out the hole for the speaker, and see what mistakes I've made. But that's a problem for future Boogie. No turning back now. Mama, I tried. Got that thing bolted in place. As you can see, it's plenty strong. Door panel lost a little bit of strength, but we're going to address that separately. Now I ran the window up and down, and it actually tracks just like it did before, thank God. These welds won't be going to the state fair, but they're good. They'll hold. Alright, so now it's time to start closing up all the holes, getting a spot for that speaker to mount to in that gigantic hole I just whacked in that thing. There's a lot of materials you can use to do this. Considering it's a door panel and it'll probably get wet inside there at some point, it's nice to not use MDF or any kind of wood. Want something dense, thick, but most importantly easy to work with. One trick I like to use is using HDPE or Teflon. I've had good luck buying cuts off of eBay, then you gotta wait for shipping and all the other stuff. Then one day I had a revelation. Went to Home Goods and got a cutting board. Think about it. Stuff's plastic. It's available in a whole bunch of thicknesses. You can get them in any color you want. Most importantly, they're cheap and readily available. You can cut this stuff, glue it, router it, and never have to worry about it getting wet. First thing, I gotta go get a template made for the piece that's gonna close up that speaker hole. Got this template made, marked out a few of the holes in the door panel where I'm hoping I can get screws through. Laid this out on some blue tape just to make it easier to see. I'm gonna go through, punch all these holes to locate them on this piece of board before I cut it out. Let's give it a test fit. And hold this with a screw. All right, it's pretty well lined up. Take the speaker, give it a shot. Actually fits pretty well. It's not touching anything out back. Luckily that cobbled up bracket keeps the track and everything else out of the way. Looking at this, I've got a really irregular surface to seal to. So what I think I might do is I might actually mount this to the door panel instead of to the door. So, well, here's the deal. I really don't want to mount this speaker to the door panel. Just a flimsy piece of like 1/4 inch board, and I want the woofer mounted really solid. So mounting to the door panel is probably not the best plan. So I want to keep with the plan of mounting to the door skin. The problem I'm having is I've got all these different layers to this level, this level, this level, this level, and that level. So I can't get any flat spot. The only real flat spot is along these top edges that the door panel actually sits flat against. I can't attach to the back side of this level because of these lower spots. So the most exotic thing I can do is come in here, trim out this inner lower section, come across over here, get this lower section out, and just trim around these edges, get all these low spots out of my way, make one big plate, mount it from the back, throw some screws in it, and call it a damn day. Now there's no way around it. I'm gonna have to embiggen this hole.
Embiggins? Never heard that word before I moved to Springfield.
Quite a bit. Well, that's definitely bigger. Kick panels are sounding like a pretty good idea right now. All right, so having whittled this whole area out, I went ahead, cut this. This is a new door speaker plate. Let's see how this fits. Okay, so that fits pretty well. Still a couple of issues. This isn't quite scalloped out enough to miss this feature in the door. Over here, there's some inner door structure that's keeping the door plate from sitting flat of the inner door skin. Up here where I've got this section marked out, the door catch on the backside is actually holding it up. So take the router, scallop that section out, see if I can't make some room to get this whole thing slid in just a little bit more. That should help me clear this side. I got some pockets cut on the front and the back side of the door plate in order to clear some of the stuff that's inside this door. So let's see how this thing fits. Oh yeah, that goes in place much better. Lays reasonably flat up against here. So I can go in, drill some holes through the inner door skin, get the speaker plate mounted to the door, start building a ring to get the woofer mounted. While I'm at it, I'm also going to go ahead and cut another one of these for the passenger side. All right, I'm going to make a template of these openings. Cut a piece that's oversized so I can screw it in from the back side. So all these openings are actually punched, so they have a lip all the way around the inside of them. So once I get a piece cut, sized up for the opening, I'm going to come in here and dig a channel with my router all the way around so that the piece will come in, sit flat on the back side, so I can screw it in from the outside. All right, so I made a nice template out of MDF, which fits pretty well in the door. Digging this channel in this blanking plate for the door is going to get pretty tricky. So here's what I came up with. Meet my cutting table. This is version 2.0. I'm going to be brief since nobody watched the garage video that I made a couple of years ago in my old shop. This is an improved version of the same table. Call it cutting table 2.0. What makes this table nice is I have a section where I can drop in different tools. I've got a blanking plate, got a plate that drops in, turns this into a table saw. Most importantly, I've got this section that drops in, turns it into a router table. I've actually dual drilled this thing so I can drop in one of two routers that I have. To start off with, we're going to use my Craftsman 1/4" shank router. Reason is I have this 1/4" drive rabbiting bit. Now what I'm going to have to do is come in, rabbit this edge on the template, and then swap over to my Bosch router so I can use some drop-in router guides to make this thing work. This will all make sense in a minute. I do have a cobbled together dust collection system. It works okay. Regardless, this thing's going to make a huge mess. So I'm going to do all this cutting outside. Now set up over here on the bench is a mock-up of what this is going to look like. Got the Bosch router back in. By the way, that Craftsman router was a gift from my lovely sister and her wonderful husband, probably 20 years ago. Thanks, sis. Anyway, with the Bosch router in here, I'm able to use these collars. Doing a little bit of math, I was able to figure out that if I put that Babbitt groove in there, I can get this up against one of these collars and basically turn one of these large bits into a flush trim bit. That'll allow me to lay this template flat down on one of the plastic block-off plates and dig a groove in it that follows the shape of this template on the inside. The way this is set up, it's actually going to come inside this edge a little bit, which is good because it gives me a little bit of slop inside that hole. But it'll also cut on the back side, so it'll hopefully miss any obstructions or anything that are on the back side of the door skin. So I can do this once and get it over with. Now, one annoying issue that still remains is the bits I have aren't plunge bits. So I have to find some way to hog a hole out in this thing to give the router someplace to start. Got an idea. I think I'm going to start up in the corner where the block-off plate isn't going to wrap up around the backside anyway. Yeah, that'll work. I'm going to go ahead and screw these two pieces together just to make them safer to handle on the router. That should keep my fingers attached. Alright, let's see what we got. This thing came out pretty well. Kind of boring that hole worked out. Let's see how this thing fits. Alright, so it fits the opening really well. That's good. Well, this tab and this edge are really boning me at the moment. Not sure what they're for. Could go look in the passenger side, but I'm not about to do that shit. Looks like there's supposed to be a blanking plate for this opening. Now, this truck was hit before. This is definitely an aftermarket door, so maybe whatever went here just didn't get put back in. I'm a little surprised by all this because this was clearly inspected. Either way, I'm going to cut those tabs off, try this thing again. Well, that cut a lot better than I expected. Now, due to this spot being sunken in, I am going to have to trim this out.
I don't think I'm losing a whole lot by not attaching it at this point. I'm still gonna screw it all the way around wherever I get a chance. This spot just won't be touching.
Holy shit. This thing's really turned into a science project.
But it actually fits now. At least with this one done, I can stick it to the other side, make a template, and not have to go through all this trial fitting again. You watch, I'll open up that other side and there's gonna be some kind of blanking plate here that I could have just bought. Oh well.
All right, with the speaker plate fabricated and the most complicated of the block-off plates done, you need to fabricate block-off plates for the other holes. I'm not going to bore you with the gory details, but the techniques will be the same. Have to fabricate a plate for here and here, get this plate mounted, then get the door panel back on so I can lay out a center hole in the speaker plate to start mounting the speaker. So let's meet up when that's all done. Drilling this hole allows me to establish a datum. What is a datum? Just a fancy word for a starting point. Allows me to keep everything lined up in all these different panels. I had to make an exact round template for the speaker rings. So I took a piece of aluminum, counterbored a hole into it that I could put a screw in, and I used that screw to attach a piece of 3/4 MDF to make the template out of. Attaching the MDF to the aluminum plate, so I can clamp that down to my table, just spin the MDF template piece to make a perfectly round outer diameter on the template. Now with one perfectly round MDF template, I can rough cut another piece a little bit larger, use a little bit of double-sided template tape with a matching datum hole in the center, line them up with the drill bit, and stick the two pieces together. Take more of a flush trim bit on the router. I've got two perfectly matching, perfectly round MDF templates. Man, I love a good template. This outer template's been dual drilled. This will allow me to attach the actual speaker ring to the door plate and give me pre-drilled holes for the speaker once it goes in. The only thing I'm really using it for here is just to mark out how much more of the inner door skin I need to cut out. Now you may have seen me use this body saw. This thing's from Eastwood. It's been super handy for cutting this sheet metal. The top tip here though is use hacksaw blades. I actually got that from another YouTube channel called Bellow Customs. They do a lot of hot rod and old style custom stuff. They actually have a YouTube channel that you should go check out. Remember when I said you could split the Kicker templates into two pieces? Well, I took one of them, split it apart, and used that to trace the inner diameter since it has the holes for the speaker mounting already laid out in this ring template. I marked those out, then rotated the template to make another set of holes. With a little bit of math, I realized I had a perfectly sized hole saw I could use to open up the center, and then take my rabbiting bit, rabbit the inside diameter of the template ring, and then just flush trim the rest that's left from the rabbit. That leaves me with an inner diameter and outer diameter that perfectly match the speaker. So with the speaker rings cut, the inner door skins cut to fit the speaker rings and the speaker plates, all the speaker plates made, I can actually start mounting some speaker rings and some speakers and some speaker plates, get the thing screwed together, and get someplace on this damn thing, and stop just talking and pointing all the time. This is fun. So anyway, I'm gonna draw out that dual bolt pattern so I get the speaker rings mounted to the speaker plate and give me something to mount the speakers into the speaker rings on. Then I gotta cut out the center hole for the speaker to actually fit through. Good times. Don't go anywhere. All right, got the speaker plate back in, speaker ring on the speaker plate. Time for a mock-up. Got the Kicker 6 3/4 KSS something something something, whatever, it's going in. All right, fits. Oh, baby. Being as I'm just running wood screws into this, I really do not want to strip this. Oh man. Onto the door panels. Hopefully from here on out you should see a huge difference in the quality of the video. I finally broke down and bought a real camera. Up until now, I was always recording on my old phone, which had a cracked screen. Recently it developed this black ooze, and then the screen just started wreaking havoc with any recording. It would screw up the focus, and it just became unusable. So I'm working pretty hard on this YouTube thing, and if you like what you're seeing, do me a favor, drop me a like, share, subscribe, and maybe even drop a comment. It'll help get the boss off my ass. Alright, so speaking of door panels, it's time to get serious here at Boogie Chassis. Let's talk about door cards. See a lot of people out there talking about door cards, door cards, door cards, when they're talking about door panels. What is this, London town? Are we drinking tea? No. In this country, we drink coffee because we like to get fucking gacked. This is America, and these are door panels, nerd. So with that solved, here we are on the door panels of the truck. And hopefully you remember that there is this datum hole. That datum hole was really started here on the template. This template has the shape that dictates the location of everything. So once again, I can just take my little drill bit, drop it in here. This trim panel is going to be the next piece that I build. I build the trim panel to fit over the outside of the speaker ring, and then cut the door panel so it fits over the speaker ring also. So as you might guess, grabbed an offcut piece of MDF, laid the template over it, drilled out the datum, traced this piece out, and cut it on the jigsaw. Really had to slow myself down here. Super impatient. I couldn't do any router tricks to make this easier. When cleaning up, make sure you ruin an expensive microfiber towel. Fuck! Back to the door panel. It's time to cut a hole in this thing so it fits back onto the door and goes over the speaker ring. Just gonna take a razor blade, score the vinyl all the way around, and cut this backing board. Well, you want to talk about committed. No turning back now. Really don't want to attack this thing with a jigsaw. It'll just tear it to pieces. I think I might go back to the body saw on this. Still got it. Alright, let's see how we did. So that fits pretty well. Need to get some replacement clips for this door panel. A bunch of them broke when I was taking this out. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to finish the trim ring that I'm working on. My initial idea was to have a big speaker grill that went over the top of it. This thing's already starting to get kind of bulky. Now I'm doubting that 3/4 inch trim piece is going to look good sitting on here since it's so much thicker. So far, I'm liking what I see. Now, these speakers did come with these grills. They'd probably look okay. Just not sure how I would use them. I can always cut the trim ring out to fit these in there and just kind of slap them in. I'd like to do something slightly more fancy than that. Although now that I see it together, I do kind of like it. Bitch. Probably gonna wish I'd done something other than white, at least for that trim ring. Oh well, it's done now. With the speaker grill in, you can see I got one problem. I have the speaker clocked wrong. No big deal. I dual drilled that obviously, so I'll just swap the way the ring is screwed in so that I can get the speaker grill in with the Kicker logo at the bottom. Now, got this plate all routed out. Actually, that works out pretty well. I think I am going to go ahead and use these Kicker speaker grills. I was thinking about forming my own grills, but this thing is so thin on the edges, I don't want to do all that. Now what I am going to do is round all the outer edges, the hole for the speaker, just to give it a nice finish. Then on the back side, I'm going to do just a light rabbet all the way around. Take some of this material back, because this is getting wrapped in vinyl. So I need a spot to wrap the vinyl around the edge, bring it over and staple it all the way around to hold the vinyl in place. And through the magic of fake television, here's the almost finished piece. Try to idiot proof it because it was me working on it. This is obviously the outside. On the back side, rabbit. But that old roundover bit is dull. Not the greatest bit in the world. Doesn't even have a pilot bearing on it. Burnt the dickens out of this MDF. Hey, that looks alright. Guess the next step here is to cut this hole for the tweeter. Alright, with that hole now cut, I can start to assemble this tweeter, see what it's going to look like. From the back, got this little lock ring. From the front, the tweeter goes in. The tweeter's got all these different trim rings that pop on and off. Like this is a flush, but it also comes with angled trim rings so you can point the tweeters in whatever direction you need. And these are really meant for a thin panel. So I'm probably going to have to get a rabbet put into this so that the lock ring can actually make contact with the tweeter. Before I do that, I got to lay this out so I can measure, figure out what size rabbeting bit I need. Now little parts require little rulers. That looks like it's about 3/16. Now I also have to remember to leave room for the fabric that I'm going to wrap this whole trim panel in. So I'll see if I can get like a 1/4 inch rabbeting bit. I'd like to go a little bit bigger, so 5/16 would be best, but I don't even know if they make that kind of thing. Now as luck would have it, I happen to have this adjustable set of router guides from an old drill bit that I broke back when I was much younger and even dumber than I am now. This happens to fit the 3/8 rabbeting bit I've been using this whole time. Speaking of being dumb, wish I would have known I had this whole time, because that would have helped me in some of the other stuff that I was doing. Okay, these things came out pretty good. I gotta say, when I was routering this thing out, I got real nervous. With this much work into a part, this is usually where I make a huge mistake. No slip of the router, all my fingers are still here, so let's see how the tweeter fits. Just using that flush ring, there's gobs of room around that thing. Hope I don't regret that. When I did the depth on the router, I just kind of eyeballed it. I would call that about 1/8 of an inch. Kicker being such sweethearts, they send you this little guy. Looks like a brush for a mouse. What it really is it locks into the grill on the tweeter that you get a handle on it. Oh yeah. Come on, get tight. So it fits in there. What do you know? May have to read the directions a little bit more closely, make sure I've got this thing going together correctly. It's in there and I can feel it lock, but it's still loose. I don't know if that's normal. I guess we'll find out. And with those tasty trim panels done, I finally came to my senses and took the doors off the truck so I can sound deaden these johns. The whole point of building all those block off plates is to close the door in and turn it into a speaker enclosure. I'm not going to pretend I understand how this all works. This door seems like a big enclosure for these 6 3/4 inch speakers. But I'm just going to trust the experts and do it anyway. Professional-ish. One thing I was glad to find was this big opening doesn't have any kind of block-off plate like I was worried about in the driver's door. It doesn't even have the tabs around that aftermarket door. Now in a way I'm glad those tabs aren't there. I'd been really pissed if I did all that work for no reason. Is it cold in here? I'm going to clean these inner doors with some Scotch-Brite and alcohol, give them a little bit of tooth, and help that sound deadener stick. Now that that's all scrubbed and clean, just remembered I got to go to the door jamb and knock a 1-inch hole for the wiring to pass through. Damn it. Damn it, that wind is kicking. The spot I'm looking at is right here, just below the top door hinge. Look at that. Literally bleeding for you guys. Bada bing. Grommet. And by the way, this is a unit bit. See these called Christmas tree bits all the time? Stop embarrassing yourself. With that hole done and housekeeping complete, let me show you one of the products I'm using. This is Silliness? It came from Amazon. Now I can't remember if this is mass loaded vinyl or closed cell, open cell. It's adhesive backed and you literally just stick it to the inside of the door skin. I read some horror stories about this stuff falling off in the heat. That's why I did all the prep on the doors. To help this stuff stick, I'm going to cut all these panels, lay them in there, and then put some heat on the back side of the door. Hopefully heating up the outer door skin and the sound deadening will make it stick better. Did somebody leave a window open? Fuck! Fucking Gary. Alright, panel's up to about 90 degrees. Let's give this a shot. Come on, bitch. Quit sticking where I don't want you to. Got it laid in there pretty well. Gaps are fairly tight. There are some areas I'm going to have to hit with like a second layer, but that ended up alright. It's time to start putting the panels back in the doors and sound deadening the inner door skin. Before I do that, I have to get the wires in there. For the tweeters, I'm using a 16 gauge. I'm using a 12 gauge for the woofers. Now I have to run 2 sets of speaker wires out to the door because I'm going to put the crossovers inside the cab. My choice of wire size is probably overkill. You'll understand when you see the crossovers in a minute. There's a big debate in the car audio community over wire. You basically have 2 choices, CCA and OFC. CCA is copper-clad aluminum. The core of the wire strands is aluminum, with the exterior being coated by copper. Then OFC is pure 100% copper. No coatings, no aluminum core, no nothing. I have an electrical background. I've done everything from 12 volts to lightning, and I can tell you aluminum is not as good a conductor as copper. I wouldn't have paid any of this any mind, except I did see some good tests where the OFC outperformed the CCA. So I'm going with OFC. You do whatever you want. As far as brands, I'm going with NVX. That's a budget brand, not a big name, but I cannot accept that the brand makes any difference. The insulating jacket doesn't make any difference, and as long as it's OFC, I'm sure it's fine. Compounded by the fact that this wire is for a set of components in the doors of this truck, it's not going to matter. I drilled a hole in a bracket right here so I can mount the wire to it with a cushion clamp. The last thing I want is to get out, give this thing a test run, and hear the wire flapping around inside the door. Plenty of wire. Now before I close up this last hole, right behind the door panel, you need to address some of these rods. These things can bang around and make all kinds of noise. I don't want to just leave what's basically a guitar string inside the door. So I'm going to wrap those with little chunks of this silliness. See if I can't deaden some of that sound. So I've gone to all the low spots with that silliness and stacked it up. I try to keep it below the parts on the inner door where the door panel touches so that it doesn't push the door panel out at all. I also use it to close up some of the random holes that are in this door that I won't need anymore. This is kill mat. This is what I'm going to use to keep the rod from the door handle from vibrating against the door. Slid a piece of silliness back behind there. It just seemed to kind of bind up a little bit, and I thought, what the hey, I've got this, it's a lot thinner. Process of using this is exactly the same peel and stick as the silliness. Here I'm just going to wrap it over that edge. There. Lets that door handle glide nicely. Won't trap anybody inside the truck. And notice this panel hasn't been covered yet. So here's the piece that's going to cross over this opening. I'm going to stick to this block off plate, come down and attach here in this low spot, while not holding up the rod from actuating to open the door. What I did to make this happen is I scored the backing paper to leave this center section in here. That way it's stuck on the sides, but the rod can ride through here, won't get stuck in any adhesive. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to make sure to peel the right part of it. Like that. There we go. It seems to have worked. Now the final layer of the door panel is going to get covered with this kill mat. I'm going to go over the top of all this other stuff and basically seal it up, make it one solid chunk. And boy, I hope this works. This stuff's nice and thin, but I am going to stay just inside of the outline of the door panel just to keep it from hopefully causing me any troubles with the door panel going on. I would like to be able to get the window regulator out if I ever have a problem with that. And I do have a couple spots where the grab handle for the door bolts up. Now this stuff I am going to go ahead, run the roller across just to try to get it stuck down as well as possible. I want to stick it to the silliness that's underneath it. Now, if you ever said, what's up with this guy and all his templates? Here's a perfect example of why I make them. I want to trim this kill mat around the speaker ring. Just lay my template over, mark it out. See? Stupid like a fox. Oh, baby. Sound deadening's all done. As you can see, I still have to cut a hole for the tweeter wiring to pass through. And let's test fit the trim panel. So that trim panel looks pretty good on there. Still real happy with it. I did reclock the speaker on this door, so that's good to go. Managed to find some pretty close replacements for the door panel clips online. Now those new door panel clips are really aggressive, so I'm gonna have to be very careful taking this door panel off. I swear I feel a breeze. Who touched the thermostat? Now, this is entering a really weird period because I've never actually upholstered anything. I built speaker boxes, but I never even so much as wrapped them in carpet. Being as the interior of the truck is blue, I started looking online for blue vinyl. Found a company called Sailrite, and it's no surprise, there are about as many blues as you could imagine out there. So I got many different samples of this stuff to try to find one that matched as close as possible to my truck. I didn't have much luck with that, but I did find one that I kind of like. All American Imperial Blue. What does that mean? It's close enough. This Boogie gave me some advice to just use a color that accents rather than matches perfectly since I was having so much trouble with it. So that's what we're gonna do. Instructions tell you to press it down. There's actually gobs of working time with this stuff. So I'm gonna start by wrapping around the corners and stapling these edges. I've got an air stapler. To my horror, I couldn't find 3/8 long staples anywhere for my stapler. So I bought this nerdy looking thing. This is a Stanley electric staple gun. Fires off normal staples and actually does brads too. Now just out of curiosity, I did a test piece. I ran staples through like 4 layers of this crap. And that looks pretty nice. And that's not even glued. Let's start on this edge, wrap it over. I'll pull it nice and tight. Hope for the best. Oh, that looks like absolute shit. Well, I was hoping to look like a real hero putting this on. It's something anyway. I'm making a real mess out of this thing. Holy Hannah, that was rough. I absolutely underestimated how hard that was going to be. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I did all the research, figured I understand the techniques. That was a lot more than I was expecting. This was my first time doing it, so I'm giving myself a little bit of a pass. That was something else. I missed a bunch of spots wrapping the inside of the speaker ring. You won't be able to tell the speaker grill in. Also, got a huge holiday here, right where you can see it. That's kind of heartbreaking, but it just keeps getting better. Some of these big lumps are probably going to be visible while the panel's put together. Some of them are going to be right in your face when you open the door. All told, I'm going to go ahead and run these anyway. I figure with all the flaws, they'll match the rest of the truck. We're using some of the old clips on the back side of the door just to get this baby in place. I'm going to just pop this down. Got this bullshit trim panel I just upholstered very badly. I'm going to drop the wiring to the hole in the door panel I just cut. Get this lined up. Since I didn't put any clips on this side, I can just pick it up, put a couple clamps in it, hold the orientation, pop those clips off the back side. Now I have access to run some screws in through the door panel into the trim panel and get that thing locked in permanently, or until I rebuild it. There it is. Some nice, fresh clamp marks in it. That's okay. Doesn't detract too much from the mess I've already made of it. Now with that panel mounted onto something even a dumb electrician can do, wire up these speakers. I've already made up the tweeter with just some butt connectors. Now it's time to wire up the woofer. There's just a couple of spade connectors. I had some heat shrink and viola. These babies trained up out of the way. I'm gonna add a zip tie to that. It's just begging to get into the window. Let's make sure the window rolls up and down. What do you say? Now the coup de grace. For this ugly spot back here, that's pretty cool. Matter of fact, if it wasn't for the vinyl, I'd be really happy with this thing. The color doesn't match. This is a little bit more gray maybe. This is a lot more blue. Not to mention the fact that I did a real shit job wrapping it. Okay, with the door panel pretty much done, had to get out wiring into the cab of the truck. I looked all over the place for boots to make this work. Didn't really have much luck. In the end, I'm just going to protect it as best I can and stab it through the side of the cab. Got all that protecting sleeve around the wire, so I'm not worried about that getting messed up. using a cushion clamp to strap the wire back. That's held in place by a riv nut. The door opens and closes just fine, and all that wire will be protected from anything moving and from the elements. So now about the crossover for these Kicker components. I would have loved to mount these things inside the doors, but the crossover is wide open. Kicker instructions tell you can mount them in the doors, it just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Crossover's got one pair of wires feeding into it, and two sets coming out of it. One for the woofer, and one for the tweeters. However, what caught me off guard was it was pre-wired and has very small wire size. I don't really want to hardwire everything, because I will have these doors off at some point. So I'm going to use some pre-made connectors I got off of Amazon, naturally. That way I can disconnect the speaker wires going to the door, so I can actually remove the door a little bit more easily. And because future Boogie's kind of an idiot, I'm going to flip-flop the male and female from the tweeter and the woofer so that I can't mix them up. If I send the woofer signal to the tweeter, it'll blow them to pieces, and I absolutely don't want that to happen. Finally, I got the crossover mounted to a piece of aluminum plate. Cover the piece of aluminum with a piece of silliness. Cut a slot on one side so I could tie up the bundle of wiring. So how'd we do? Really happy with all the block-off plates and the sound deadening. Noticed a huge difference when opening and closing the passenger door versus the driver's door, which hasn't been treated yet.
Buzz nut. Not. Not. As if.
Obviously the upholstery was kind of a mess, but I can always redo those later. Speaking of later, next time I'm going to build a sub box, get the amps and all the wiring in, and then it's time for a test run. So stay tuned.